Good day. Today I'm going to show you a small presentation on how to disassemble, inspect, and reassemble an Agrinautic 65,000 series. Um, this one that I'm showing you here is equipped with a wheat arrow fan. So by convention, the front is where the fan is, and the rear is where we see the pump casing at the back there. I'm match marking every part that I'm gonna split to make sure they go back to the same position. It's a lot easier when we reassemble the pump. We'll first start by setting up the fan for removing. So we're gonna take the screws to take the spinner of the fan off to have access to the retaining bolt, which is in the center of the fan hub, and it threads into the shaft of the pump. Okay, we'll remove the spinner just by pulling. The mark has been done. There we go. Next, we have to take that bolt out. Okay, now we're going to remove the support bracket for the mechanism used to change the pitch of the fan blades. So there's two bolts that are attached to the bearing housing of the pump to hold the bracket. See, while I'm taking out those bolts, this wheat arrow fan is an adjustable pitch blade fan. When it's feathered the way it's positioned, the blades are feathered the way it's positioned right now. It doesn't make the pump turn. As we flatten the pitch of the blades, that creates the power required to turn the pump, and it regulates the speed of the pump as well. Some other systems are used, like the lane fan brake system. The lane's got an electrical brake to stop the pump, preventing protecting the seal from burning. So when the hopper is empty, it's just two different systems. But okay, now in order to remove the hump from the shaft, I'm just going to use two screwdrivers and just pry the sleeve of the fan off just by pulling it forward. There we go, it's off. Okay, on the shaft there's a Woodruff key and a groove into the hub of the fan that needs to be aligned, preventing the hump from turning onto the shaft. Okay, now we're going to be working on the removal of the rear case of the pump. There's 6 bolts. Again, make sure you don't forget to put your match mark, because that casing has a position to go. You see, there's the outlet of the pump fitting there. It has to be at that particular position so it matches the the tube and hose on the aircraft. Okay, now slightly tapping onto the in order to remove it. I go slow, try to preserve the gasket, see if if it's in good condition, we can maybe reuse it. Pull it out, and that exposed the. Okay, I'm talking about the match mark again here, but now it exposed the impeller. I'm putting some easy out fluid to remove the jam nut, and I use a screwdriver into the impeller just to hold the prevent the impeller from turning. Usually, it's not too hard, too difficult to remove, especially if the previous person that assembled this pump used some anti-seize compound to prevent freezing up. Okay, now the impeller is also threaded onto the so I reinstalled temporarily the fan to have a grip on the shaft so it doesn't turn, and it's usually not that hard to start. So there we go. We feel a bit of pressure, and that's normal because there is a spring that's part of the mechanical the mechanical seal. So we're unscrewing the impeller of the shaft. There we go. Okay, there's the spring I was talking about. There's the mechanical seal. Okay, the spring is actually pushing on the outside of the seal to create a pressure between the two faces of the seal. I'm just going to use a couple screwdrivers trying to. It's pretty hard because the seal's got a rubber part that goes right over top of the shaft. That's really snug in there. So you work your way easily all the way around trying to pull it out. Okay, there we go. Okay, here's the rubber part with the holder, and that's the face, the rear face of the mechanical seal. I'm looking at the lip, not the lip, but the face that rubs against the other face there for damage. It's pretty good indication. That's usually where you got a problem when you have a leak. Okay, now I'm going to use the front plate of the pump in order to be able to remove. Okay, here's the gasket that comes off in order to remove the forward part of the seal. So again, the marker important, so they go back to the matching part goes back in the same position. I'm just gonna lightly tap this front plate off, and on the front seal there is a drain gouge there that needs to be towards the bottom of the pump. It's hard to see, but and I'm gonna use a pressing plug to push on that seal there. But that's going to be done a little later on. Now I'm going to work on removing the, let's say the bearing feels rough and or draggy. I'm removing the bearing. I got to remove that circlips, the outer one and the inner one on one side and the other one on the other side, so I can use a press to push the shaft out with one of the bearing. You work slowly and don't use excessive force on this because it's a bearing, so you could damage it. Okay, there it goes. There's the shaft with one bearing. That can be removed afterwards, and there's another bearing inside the bearing holder, that might call it, or that needs to be removed. This is the one that we removed the large circlips previously. So I use a pressing plug and just push with the slowly with the press. There we go. So this other bearing is off. Okay, these will be cleaned and inspected to see if we reuse them or not. And the other bearing on the shaft will be removed off the shaft, so we can turn them and see how they are. Okay, now we're gonna work on removing the front part of the seal. I got a pressing plug the right size. I'm gonna use to push it out. There we go. We got the front part of the seal. This one's got an O-ring or around on the other, so it'll seal between the front plate and the actual seal. So that's the way it goes. You got front seal, back seal, and uh, the uh, the spring that's holding the pressure so it doesn't leak. Okay, just to show you how things are organized, this is the bearing holder with the footer where it goes onto the aircraft. That goes inside. Both bearings are positioned at the front and the back. And then the fan goes on the side of the shaft where the key is. Okay, we'll put that back and we'll work on the other end. I'm going to show you the other end of the shaft, the assembly. Okay, the shaft goes through the front plate of the pump. We put the seal, front part, the rear part, and the spring, and then the impeller is screwed on, threaded on, and then the rear case goes over top of everything. Okay, cleaning is important. These parts are working into product that are corrosive, so cleaning and using some anti-corrosion lubricant is quite important. That's where the front part of the seal will go. Okay, now here's a new seal. Part number is written in the book. There's a manual for it, so always use it. Okay, and the one that needs to be used is a silicone carbide seal. There's a washer, a metal washer at the end of the spring there. We don't use that washer, so you remove it, and it's for some other usage, I believe. But okay, you see, there's a piece of cardboard in between the two faces to prevent scratching. These are quite fragile, actually, so you got to be careful when you handle them. Okay, I've mentioned before that there is a O-ring around the front part of the seal. I'm gonna lubricate this so I can slide it into the front plate easily. And there's a groove that needs to be aligned with the bottom of the pump. So if it leaks, it'll leak at the bottom, not at the top. That's on the front part of the front seal. Okay, the nice flat part of the front seal goes towards the rear. I put a bit of lubricant on the plate, inside the plate as well, so it'll slide easily. So I try not to touch that face and not to put any grease on it. And I use the cardboard so my greasy hands don't get in contact with the seal, and I just push to make it seat properly at the bottom. You could use a plastic plug to help out if you can't put it by hand, but usually it's not that hard. Okay, now I'm gonna reinstall the bearing. You put the proper bearing at the proper position. Okay, we're gonna slide it. Okay, that's the rear bearing. Usually this is the new bearing well, the one we replace most of the time. Snap ring goes back on to lock it in place. And I use another pressing plug to press both the shaft and the bearing we just installed into the bearing holder assembly there. Okay, make sure it's well seated at the proper position. And then we're gonna go on to the other side. So we're just pushing the other bearing flush, and we'll finish it off with the pressing plug there at the other end. There we go. Okay. Let's double check everything is seated properly in the right position. And now we're back in the vise. We're going to put the large circlips for the last bearing we just installed to lock it in place. Just make sure it's well into the groove. There we go. Okay, now we have pushed the front seal into the front plate. Now it's time to put it back onto the shaft and the casting for the bearing. So you line up the marks, the matching marks, so it's in the same position. You be careful when you slide it over top the shaft so you don't bang that seal. Okay, you got to realign. Make sure you're well aligned with the holes before you start threading. Here, I'm going to turn it a bit. There we go. Like I mentioned before, on the aircraft, you could, if you have a seal that's leaking, just remove the part that you see now, the 6 bolts and the front part, and you have access to the seal. Okay, I'm putting some faucet grease onto the shaft to help slide the rear part of the seal. It's actually the rubber portion over the top of the shaft. I'll put a little bit onto the rubber side too, making sure I'm not touching the silicone carbide face. I'm gonna engage or start putting on the seal onto the shaft by hand, and then I'll use I use a socket to push on the inner portion of that seal to slide it on. When you push it, you be careful to leave a very small gap between the two faces. This gap will be compensated by the spring pushing onto the other part of the seal with the spring there. It's just that if there's not a perfect flat match between the two seals, the spring will with the rubber will take that gap and create a good seal so it doesn't leak. I'll show it to you. There we go. You see there's the inner part that's over the shaft, and the other part I'm just going to push. You see you got a little play there. Not much, just it's a few thousandths of an inch. So the spring will push and create the right friction between the two, so preventing it from leaking. Okay, before reassembling the impeller, you put anti-seize compound on the tread. It's a lot easier to remove if we take the time to put some on the treads like this. Okay, just put it evenly over the tread. Put the spring back on and start threading the impeller. Notice that I've put the temporarily put the fan assembly up front to help me hold the shaft. Okay, just a little torque, light torque, just to make sure that, there we go, that's good enough. Now it's time to put the star washer and the jam nut back on. I'm using a bit of anti-corrosive oil inside that nut to prevent it from corroding. Okay, star washer, jam nut. Okay, and again here, a slight torque is good enough. There we go. Okay, just turn it, make sure the bearings are good and everything is no excessive friction. There will be some friction from the seal and the drag of the bearing, but okay, I decided to use the same gasket. It was in good condition, so put it back on. Then we'll reinstall the rear casing of the pump at the mark that we previously did, so we have the right position. I don't put any silicone on those unless I really have to. I've got a problem with the pump that's leaking, because next time around when you or in the field when you take it apart to replace a seal or something, if you have silicone in there, it will destroy the gasket for sure. And usually, it's we don't have much problem with gasket leak there, if it's in good condition, of course. So, okay, torque those bolts. Like I was saying, you can remove those 6 bolts, take the front part of the pump with the impeller, and you can go in the shop and remove and change the seal without taking the rear casing off the aircraft. It saves a bit of time. The only thing you have to do is make sure that the pump is empty from product or water. Just drain it through the bottom plug, and take those 6 bolts out, and you tap it, and then you got the old unit in your hand to remove the seal or work on the bearing if you have to. Rear bearing is the one that get contaminated the most. That's the one that you have to check the most, because whenever the seal leaks, it pushes product into that bearing. So this is the one to pay attention. Okay, there we go. Now we'll put back the fan. I'm just going to put a bit of lubricant on the shaft. Make sure the key, the Woodruff key, is there. And I just got to align the slot that's in the hub with the key and slide it over, which I'm about to do. Okay, the groove, the key, we line those up. We just slide it over. Okay, we're gonna reinstall the two bolts that's holding the bracket for the pitch mechanism of that wheat arrow fan. Again, these blades, when they're in position feather like they are, they serve as a brake because they don't supply any power for the pump to be turning. So it's a good system, but it needs a bit of maintenance with those movable parts. The bracket there, it's important that it goes back to the same position as removed, because there's a vernier cable that actuate those this mechanism in order to change the pitch of the fan there. It's a good time to talk maybe a little bit. The wheat arrow fan needs a bit of greasing on the bearing at the root of those blades. The round part just in front of my hands, there is a large bearing that slides over the hub that needs to be lubricated as well to make sure that it's easy to change the pitch of that the pilot is able to change the pitch of those blades. Okay, once we're done with those two bolts that holds a bracket where the vernier cable will be attached, we're going to put some anti-seize compound onto the retaining bolt that's going to go through. Okay, I'm checking here, making sure that the mechanism for the pitch is working freely. Okay, I was talking about the bolts. Here we go. We're gonna again here put some anti-seize compound on the threads. Slide it through the hub and thread it into the shaft to secure the fan. Okay, that's done. Turning it, making sure that everything is seems to be turning normally. Put the spinner back onto the fan. Again, there I tried to align it in the same position, so keeping the vibration to a minimum. Okay, we're installing the 4 screws. there we go. That comes pretty close to the end here. So thanks for watching.